In this video, we'll cover the 4 main roles and responsibilities of a business analyst. We'll also cover some additional ones, so make sure that you stick around until the end of the video. Am I being asked to do things that are strictly outside of my remit? Am I stepping way over into the technical side or way over just into the business side and not being that agent for change and that bridge between business and IT? This video is also designed to help you if you're a manager, if maybe you're in HR, you're in recruitment. The first role and responsibility is to investigate business systems. As we said in previous videos, it's very, very important that a business analyst takes a holistic view across the organization, whether it's you working on your own business or another person's organization. You have to make sure that you think about the people, the processes, the organization, and then of course the technical or the IT systems. I've covered this in a separate video called the Pop-It model. Very, very useful framework, and I'll put a link to that video in here as well. The second role and responsibility for a BA is to evaluate actions. In an earlier video, we talked about a business analyst is actually an agent for change. It's their responsibility to figure out what is the real situation right now. What is the actual position of the business? Looking at it holistically, we know where we are now. We know where we want to go. Maybe there's an opportunity that we'd like to seize, or a threat that we need to ward off, or some external factor that we need to take into consideration, and that will prompt us to make some changes in our organization, or maybe if you're working on the technical side, probably on some business systems as well. So this helps you to evaluate the actions that must be taken. However, every action has a knock-on effect on the other parts of the business system. So whether you're implementing an IT change, it's thinking about, are there any staffing changes we need to make? Are there any upskilling, any training? Do we need to bring anyone new? Or if it's a process change, maybe there's some system changes that have to accommodate that new process as well. So it's really critical that the BA is responsible and understands their role. And finally, with evaluating actions, it's important for the BA to be that internal consultant for the business, or even in your own business, to say, maybe I do have a few different paths to get to where I want to go, but what is the most viable path for me? What's the one that's going to deliver the most value straight away? Are there any restrictions that I need to take into consideration in evaluating my options? So they're a trusted internal consultant to advise stakeholders, to advise the business on what is the best course of action. So we've covered 2 of the roles and responsibilities so far. We'll get to the other 2 remaining and then a few additional ones. But before we go on, if you are enjoying the video, if it's giving you some value, then please consider hitting the like button. Consider subscribing, because this is why we exist. We want to empower you and to inform you with the theory, with the frameworks, with the tools, but then also give you some practical examples of how you can actually go ahead and implement this to get the most out of your career or out of your organization. The third role and responsibility for a business analyst is to document business requirements. It's all well and good being an internal consultant, and it's all well and good understanding what's going on and everything, but you need to make sure about knowledge management, and that's documenting business requirements. Now, every organization will have their own particular flavor of this, how they like to have things done, but as a general rule, as a business analyst, you should be really well trained and versed in how to document requirements, how to document the difference between business and general, or business and technical requirements as well, and articulate that in the way that actually adds the most value. It's one thing to say, I know how to do this and I'm an expert and I'm going to write it out in this way, but if it's not really used in the context, and if it's not really understood, in the example of, let's say, if you've got a development team that's got to implement or build some software for you, if they're not used to reading massive requirements documents, and they're used to working in a more agile format, then they're probably looking to have more of a discussion with you to explain to them the what and the why. Now, I will make a separate video on this later on, because requirements management is actually a fundamental skill set that BAs have to possess, have to master, and then just keep using almost on a daily, if not certainly on a weekly basis. The fourth role and responsibility, we can segue into that quite nicely, elaborating requirements. So the first thing, of course, the BA does, being that internal consultant and being that agent for change, is they have to investigate the situation, understand what's going on, understand the needs and the wants of the stakeholders, whether they're internal or external. So once they've gathered those requirements, it's about elaborating on those requirements. And what does that actually mean? That means getting into the real detail of it. The devil is in the detail. And I'll give you an example. It might be that you're looking to deliver a feature. Let's say it's for a report and it's for management, and they say, I need to know, I want to know our sales stats, and I want this report to come out weekly, I want another one to come out quarterly. Okay, we'll bundle that up. But let's dive a bit deeper into that. Well, Who needs to have these reports? Do we need to have any restrictions on who can see that information? Perhaps it's quite sensitive. Will it be that managers will access the system and then pull that report themselves? Will it be made available to them? Will it be emailed to them automatically? And if so, when and how frequently and at what times? And how do we consider the impact of pulling that data from the database? Is it from multiple sources? Do we have to transform that data and then crunch the numbers and normalize that data before we present it back? So these are the things that would come out of elaborating those requirements and making sure that those are understood, again in the example of software, by the engineering team, that they know exactly what good and what success looks like so they can deliver the right solution in the best possible time. Regardless of whether you're working in an agile or a waterfall format, there will always be some unknowns. And that's why it's really important as you progress through a project, in my experience as well, that you elaborate on those requirements. As more is being understood and being learned, it's communicating that to the relevant stakeholders, it's communicating that to the development teams, getting clarity and getting consensus to get to the outcome in the best way possible. Okay, so those were the 4 main roles and responsibilities of a business analyst as detailed in this book, which I'll link in the description. But it's not exhaustive. There are other roles and responsibilities as well. So let's just consider a few of those. Now, one of those is strategy implementation. It could be that an analyst is involved at the very beginning. So, okay, we need some change to happen. We need to formulate a strategy at a high level to bring about some change. Now, the analyst could be involved in, let me go and perform strategic analysis. Let me look internally, analyze the business system, investigate the situation. Let me look at what are the external factors. Are there opportunities? Are there threats there? And bringing that into the discussions for strategic formulation. It could be that they're involved in forming the strategy in an organization, working with senior stakeholders, senior managers, and even the C-suite of an organization, and thereafter actually implementing that strategy. So, okay, we know what we've got to do. It's a whole program of work, or it's a project of work. We're going to build a whole new system. It's going to have these features, and we've got to think about who's got to be trained on this. What are the impacts on staff? How do we manage this transition, without causing too much disruption? Do we need to notify our clients and our customers that this is what we're doing and why we're doing it? Being a really integral part of the project or the program team, if that's how it's managed, being that agent for change, but really at a much more senior level than what a BA is typically operating at, or may typically be operating at. Some examples of strategic implementation could be, we need to change our target operating model. We want to go through a digital transformation, and the first stage of that might be digitization. Let's look at how can we replace our paper forms, because it's not great for customers, it's a poor experience, it costs a lot of money in ink and paper, things get lost, data's all over the place, into an e-form. We have an app as an example, and that could be the first stage, and something that the business analyst could actually well and truly oversee how that is actually designed, implemented, benefits realized, and reported back into management. Another role and responsibility could be business case production. Sometimes it's very, very important, again, communication. Sometimes in organizations, you will not receive any resources, you won't get the budget, you won't get the funding, you won't get the resources, the manpower, until there's a solid business case that's been created. Now, if you're working as a junior analyst or a mid-level analyst, it might be that sometimes you work with other stakeholders to help get that information, validate that information that you are compiling into this business case, whether it's terms of reference or using a boss card framework or something similar. But also it could be that you are the specialist and you're that internal consultant, and you're going to go and perform all the analysis across all the domains, people, process, organization, IT, bring that business case to life and flesh it out with some actual qualitative and quantitative data that you've gathered to justify that business case, to justify the ask of your resourcing or your financial commitments that requires. Another one could be benefits realization. We've talked a lot about projects that a BA might be involved at the early stage, from analysis, gathering those requirements, noting them down, working in the trenches with the teams and delivering it. And in my experience, in some places, in some organizations, it's just go, go, go. You've always got to be on to the next one, delivering value. But sometimes it's really important, and it can add a lot of value and a lot of learning. And it's why it's going to implement it in agile ways of working, is to take a step back and to say, okay, we have our business case as an example, or we had this idea of these benefits that should be derived from the change that we've made. Okay, that's all well and good, but did we actually get those benefits? Were we slightly off the mark? Were we way off the mark? Were we completely wrong? Maybe we got to learn about, we were off, our analysis wasn't good enough. Or maybe we've delivered a large part of the benefits, and with just a little bit more feedback and a little bit more coaxing, a little bit more iteration to what we've delivered, we could gain significantly more value what we've seen. So it really is very important for that benefits realization, and it's actually being part of a change management role, a change management type of function, and be very useful for management, very useful for senior stakeholders to go back and say, did we actually achieve what we did? We all felt really good, we all popped the champagne and it all went well. Really, did it deliver any value? Was it good? How are people feeling after that? Were the teams burnt out? We may have got the result, we may have delivered on time and on budget, but the teams are burnt out, people are leaving. It may not feel entirely like success. That might be worthwhile considering. The final one comes down again to requirements, and it's actually the specification of IT requirements, of technical requirements. Although as a BA you're trained up and you might specialize in modeling business processes, as an example for one, you might specialize in actually modeling systems modeling techniques, but you will be familiar with some of the techniques like use case diagrams, class diagrams, modeling data, might be sequence diagrams to represent visually and to communicate to the technical team. It's more for their benefit of what they're building, the engineers. This is how I expect the system to behave. This is how the system or systems or platforms or databases will be interacting in order to fulfill this process, essentially. Not just gathering requirements and not just elaborating them, but then actually elaborating them, making them well understood, and then defining them and translating them into a technical language that can be well understood. Again, to be that agent for change and to help deliver that change in a seamless, smooth way. And again, it fosters collaboration. It fosters those discussions with the technical stakeholders to say, this is what I think, this is how it should behave. Do you see any problems, any challenges? If needs be, I can manage my stakeholders, I can manage the timelines, I can manage the budget, whatever needs to be done. So it's quite an integral part, and one that you could specialize in even just one technology stack on this. You could specialize in just Salesforce and Service Cloud as an example. But another one could be another type of system, or in another industry, how things work. For example, financial services, very strictly regulated, and how would you articulate that? How would you define what the boundaries or the requirements or the constraints on the system should be for legal and regulatory purposes as well? As I said, this is not an exhaustive list. I really hope that you've got some value out of this. So if you have, please drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. As I said, this list is not exhaustive. There are so many industries and so many positions and so many countries that business analysts operate in that you might be doing other roles. But this video is also designed to help you if you're a manager, if maybe you're in HR, you're in recruitment, and sometimes it may be a wake-up call internally or in your own life. Maybe you are working as an analyst. Am I being asked to do things that are strictly outside of my remit? Am I stepping way over into the technical side or way over just into the business side and not being that agent for change and that bridge between business and IT? So hopefully it's got some value for you. I'll see you in the next video, and thank you very, very much for watching.